There's another component to Dynamesh that I think might help you speed up your creation process and help you to get cleaner looking models. And that has to do with the fact that with this virtual clay, they've got some virtual knife kind of tools that will allow you to slice through a model and cut those pieces off. So you can see kind of what that looks like. The result of this will be. So I'm going to go ahead and rewind this back in the construction history, which is kind of a cool feature that needs to be called out as well. So if you go under File and you save your project file, you can include this undo history, which gives you this time slider up here that is basically your undo states and lets you kind of work your way back all the way through the model. So you can see from the previous videos, it was holding all the undo states to get us all the way up to where we're at, right and through here. So let me turn on the polyframe, and I'm going to step back just to the point right before I use this tool. Okay. So that might come in handy as well for you to be able to use that undo state. So to get to the slice curve tool, you're going to go ahead and hold down Control and Shift and then click in this area, and you've got a whole another tool set that you're going to be using here. So you can see that there is the slice curve, there's a slice circle and slice rectangle. I'm going to use the slice curve. Go ahead and put it on there. And then whenever I go and click Control and Shift in the viewport, it should drag out to this new tool. If you see something other than that, try it one more time. I've noticed sometimes ZBrush doesn't take the first input the first time I use this tool. So how this tool works, once you hold down Control and Shift together and click and drag out, you can just let go and it'll still be using this tool. Now if you use the space bar, like a lot of different things with inside of ZBrush, you can take that stroke and you can move it around. So you can think of this as just like a virtual knife that's going to slice right through the arm here, like this. But we can do some things that are a little more complex than just this. So say I have an angle like this, and I tap Alt, it's going to give me a curve to work with, and if I tap Alt again, it's going to give me another point to work with. So I could slice like this through here, and if I hold down Control and Shift, it'll turn back into the thing that makes selection happen. I'm going to hit undo for that. So there is a kind of a way to back out of that tool if you're in the middle of getting ready to slice and you're not sure about that stroke. You can just hit Control Shift again and it'll turn it back into this, and you can just hold down spacebar and move it out to the side, and it shouldn't do anything at that point. The other thing is if we hold down Control and Shift and drag out this line, we can double tap Alt and that'll make a hard point. Double tap Alt again, and then you can hit Alt once. So you can use a combination of hard corners and going to soft and then tapping Alt again to make hard. So you can make some really interesting shapes with this. So if I go ahead and let it do its thing and just let go, it's actually going to slice through the model. If I turn on the polyframe, if we don't have the polyframe turned on, it's really hard to tell anything happened, but if we turn this on, we can actually see that it sliced through the model. And it has some understanding of the poly groups that were already on the model. So these poly groups were there earlier whenever we had the Z-spheres, and then we converted it over to Dynamesh. It held onto that stuff. So you can see how it sliced through that. And basically this group got sliced, so it makes a new chunk there. I'm going to go ahead and hit undo, just because I want a nice clean break in the model. So you might want to have polyframe turned on whenever you're using this tool, just to kind of help aid and figure out exactly where you're going to slice through. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift and just drag straight across, and use a space bar to kind of move this thing around a little bit to get the right kind of angle that I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and let go, and it's going to slice right through like this for me. The next thing I'm going to do is turn off the polyframe, and I want to hold down Control Shift, and we've put it on this slice curve. Now I want to get back to my selection rectangle, so I'm holding down Control Shift, going in here and putting on select rectangle, because I want to hold down Control Shift. If you remember in the earlier videos, we took a look at some polygroup information, and we made it to where it's pretty easy to hide pieces of the model. So we can hold down Control Shift and click on this chunk, click on it again, and view our way around the model. And I don't want this piece either, so I can hold down Control Shift and keep taking things away like this. Okay, so that's going to be the clean break in my arm that I'm looking for. And right now there's a hole in it. If we hold down Control Shift and drag in the open viewport, we can see we can get the inverse of that. So this is the piece that's kind of hidden, the geometry that's hidden. And with inside of ZBrush, they've got something that will actually let you delete the hidden geometry. So if we go to the geometry section and open that up, we can see under Modify Topology, there's a Delete Hidden button. And you can see the custom interface. I've actually put this Delete Hidden over here. There's a couple different things that I'm using. So there's under the subdivision levels. You remember we could delete higher and lower. I put those over here, the Delete Hidden. It just makes it a little bit easier to get to, because otherwise you're going to have to remember where this stuff sits. So again, that's under Modify Topology. We're going to hit Delete Hidden. Okay, and since we're in Dynamesh, if we remesh the model like this, it's going to go ahead and close that hole up for us. Might take just a little bit of time to run through, but you can see how it's done that for us. Okay, so this slice tool, Control Shift, click in here, slice curve, it only works on one side. It doesn't work with symmetry. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, how do we deal with that? Well, there is this mirror and weld function like this. And it will take any model that you have, as long as there's no subdivision levels, so you have to delete subdivision levels. And then you can click this mirror and weld, and it will give you an exact copy. Now, it mirrored and weld from this direction over. That's not what we want. We want this side. So how do we get this flipped over here? We're going to go to the Deformation tab with inside of ZBrush, and we're looking for Mirror. So we've got Mirror X, like this, and then we're going to go under Geometry and say Mirror and Weld. So here's another place in my custom interface where I'm using these tools quite a bit. So I just stole the mirror from here under Deformation and put it here. And then I used under Geometry tab, I used the mirror and weld, and I put it here on my custom interface, just to make it easier to get to. Okay, so I'm going to tap P. I'm going to go to the side view like this. So I'm just going to kind of rotate slightly, almost to the right, hold down Shift, and then be looking at the side of the model here, just like what we see. The other thing I'm going to do is go to Polyframe, and you can see I'm going to hide everything except for these arm pieces. So I'm going to get my selection tool back, and I'm going to hide everything except for this, and I'm going to hold down Control and drag in the open viewport and get the opposite of this. Now I don't really want all these polygroup information anymore, so I can just hit Control W, which is a hotkey for polygroups, and you can see under here polygroups. We'll get into this in depth a little bit more, but you can just say Group Visible, and that's the hotkey for that, is Control W. And why I did that is if I hold down Control Shift and just bring everything back, now I've got two polygroups, just this and this to deal with. Because I'm going to want to go to the side, I'm going to want to slice something going straight across here like this. But you saw before, if I hit undo, we had all these different polygroups to worry about. So I just didn't want to have to go through and kind of select and deselect all that stuff. So I just made those groups pretty quickly. And let me run through there. I'm going to have to make those again and hit Control W. So it's pretty fast to be able to do that. Now I only have these two groups to work with and be concerned with, and it should make things a little bit easier. So I showed you the slice curve, but there is also some new tools in here that is called trim curve. And trim curve basically does this whole process that we just did, where we use that slice curve, hid the geometry, deleted it, and then re-dynameshed. This trim curve will do that all in one step. So we can go ahead and click on that. And if I click control and shift and drag out, you can see it's building up this line. Now, this shaded portion of the curve lets me know what's it going to trim away. So I don't want it to trim this way. I drug up from the bottom up like this, and it's giving me that shading. So it is possible for me just to keep moving my cursor around and change the direction like this. So again, if you ever need to move this, just hold on the space bar and you can kind of move this thing around, okay? So just want to make sure you feel comfortable with that. I'm going to go ahead and hold on space bar and get this endpoint somewhere around here, and then I can drag this across like this, and you can see you can, with being able to reposition this and move this, you can be pretty accurate with where you're going to lay this thing down. When I'm happy, I just go ahead and let go, and you can see it's just going to slice this thing off. And then I like to hit this mirror and weld after it's done to make sure the geometry is exactly the same on the left as it is the right after we're done with that. So I'll turn off polyframe, I'll turn on perspective, and here's what we've got going on with the shape of this. So I saved this out as an iteration because the next step that I'm going to show you kind of deletes this whole undo history that we were saving up in here. So the next part, I'm going to tap P and I'm going to slice off the top of the head from the rest of the body. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on Control Shift, click in here, and I'm going to put it on the slice curve right there. And you can see it, I got a little tired of going up and through here and hitting the select rectangle, this one, and the trim, because I want to use those and get to them pretty quickly. I don't really like going up to this menu, so this is where I started to add these different things to this custom menu of mine right down in here. So if you go under the brush menu, oops, sorry, just clicked the wrong model there. If we go to the brush menu, which is here, and just dock it over, you can see after we click on the select rectangle, it'll be somewhere in here. If we use the trim curve, it'll be within here. The slice rectangle, slice curve, any of those will be up here. And if you remember from the earlier videos where we made the custom interface, you can hold on Control Alt and click and drag that down into the trough down there. So I would highly encourage you to build something like this for yourself as you start to use these tools, just because you want to speed up that workflow and you want to get to this stuff as easily as possible. So after that's set up, I'm going to use the slice curve. So I'm just clicking it here, and I'm going to go ahead and hold on Control Shift, drag out, and double tap Alt to give me a nice hard point here. Then I'm going to go ahead and double tap Alt, tap Alt right here to build a point for a curve. And you can see as I drag that out, the further I drag that out, it really tweaks that corner point. So if I want to hold that, I can just tap Alt again, and it gives me a new point to kind of pull out from. So it takes a little bit of getting used to this this tool, how to build a curve to get the exact shape that you're looking for. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to build these different kind of shapes. Okay, so I basically have this right here now. Okay, and I'm going to go to the select rectangle. It's down here. Again, if you're not putting it into your custom menu, Control Shift and then click up in here, and you're going to be able to select that. And then I'm going to hold on Control Shift, click on this piece up here, and I need the inverse of this. I want to hide this so I can split it off. So I'm going to hold on Control Shift, drag in the open viewport, and that gives me the opposite of whatever I'm looking at. So now I've got the whole body, and that piece of that head is hidden for me. Okay, so once we've got that hidden, we're going to go to the tool menu. You can see over here, and make sure we're in the subtools section, and then open up split, and then within split there's a split hidden. So go ahead and split that off, and you can see that it's going to make a whole new piece for us, so we can click on this within the subtools. So now we actually have two different distinct models. We have the old model that had the piece on there, and that has been split off from there, and we've got the new model here. If we turn on this solo button, we can just isolate and view the one model at a time. So the next part is to remesh this. So if we hold down Control and drag in the open viewport, using Dynamesh, it's going to fill that hole up for us, kind of like what we did when we chopped off the piece of the arm. So if we go to the body, same thing. I'm going to go hold down Control and drag in the open viewport like this, and it's going to go through and it should close up that surface for us. So now we'll have two models, and if we use this process that I just used, it'll keep the undo history for this one piece. It splits off that piece, and this piece actually starts its own new separate undo history process. Okay, so if we turn off this solo, we can see both of them together, and you can see when you turn on and off polyframe, it only shows you the polyframe for the current piece of geometry that you're looking at. So what's the benefit of this? So this will actually help us if we want to start sculpting on the mouth area and we want to get to those pieces pretty easily. So I could turn on this solo button, and I told you I made a hotkey for that and called it Alt S. We can click on that, and then it would make it really simple for us to just start to dig into this area. So we could paint a mask right in here, kind of like this. And I'm going to hold down Control Alt and click on the mask to kind of tighten that area up. And I'll hit Control I to do the inverse of this mask. And then I'll just put it on the standard brush, make it really large like what we did in the earlier videos, and then hold down Alt to kind of dig in a little bit on that and just smooth out some of those results like this. And since we're using Dynamesh, just go ahead and take that and remesh like that, and then we can hit Alt S to bring back the other part of the model. And then now let's do the same thing on this model here. So an easy way to select subtools, if you just hold down Alt and click on the model that you want to work with, it will switch on over for you. So I want to work on the body, so I can hold down Alt and click on that. Or if I want to work on the head, hold down Alt, click on that. I'm going to hit Alt S, which is putting on this solo here. And I'm going to do the same thing for this bottom piece. I'm going to go ahead and build a mask right here like this. And I'm going to tighten up the mask, holding on Control and Alt, clicking on it, Control I to do the inverse. And then I'm going to just go ahead and, before I do anything, I'm going to smooth that out. And then I'll make my brush size nice and large, and then hold down Alt, and then click on that, and then kind of smooth that out a little bit. So if you remember, we can sharpen up the mask or we can soften it. Let's soften it. So let's hold down Control, click on it. You can see how it softens that edge a bit. So now when we smooth, it's going to smooth out those pieces, and it's not going to be so jaggedy on us. So hold down Control and drag in the open viewport to get rid of the mask, and hold down Control and drag in the open viewport to get it to Dynamesh and remesh for us again, like that. And if we turn off solo, hotkey Alt S for me, because I set that, now you can see we're starting to build up something like the structure of the mouth. Now it is possible, we could keep these things separate. It is possible for you to join these two things together as well. So just like split, there's an area that's called merge, and we could say merge visible. So anything that's visible for your subtools, it would merge visible, or you could just say merge down. It will just merge the top piece down with the other piece. So that's just some other tips and tricks for you whenever you're using Dynamesh, to where you can use the slice curve or the trim curve to chop off pieces of your model and make nice, clean kind of cuts like this. And if you think about it, this process can get you a way to where you can build multiple pieces of models that actually fit together pretty nicely and are nice and snug because they came from a one-piece model.